We're going to go ahead and move into our final question and answer session. So our first question is, what recommendations do you have for building writing skills through internships and volunteer opportunities? And are there specific types of written products or experiences in writing for specific audiences that I should look for?
Well, I'll hit the first one of those, and it's basically yes. As far as recommendations for building writing skills, you can't do better than doing. So the internships and volunteer opportunities, search those out either locally. Similar to a friend of mine who had trouble doing public speaking, he actually joined Toastmasters. There are things you can do out there, volunteer opportunities. I work at a land trust in my spare time and write grants, write reports for them as well. Different audience, different ways to go about constantly improving what you do.
I could add one other thing about internships. I know we've had internships with the state agency that I work for. A lot of times it's working on tables and figures and whatnot, but I think if you do an internship, volunteer to actually write up the results of your internship, that you can show some skills in writing, which may not be required by the agency, but it'd be just good for the intern to do that.
Great, thanks so much. Pranoti, did you want to add anything to that?
Sure, I would be happy to add to that. We actually have a handout that is available in the handout section of the webinar where you can actually see Geoscience Currents that was published late last year. This is a Geoscience Current that talks about the different types of experiences you get as an intern at AGU and AGI. And you will see in that handout that there's lots of opportunities to practice writing when you're in an internship at a professional organization, but it just doesn't have to be at a professional organization. It can be anywhere. So when we've had interns at AGU, and I know when interns have been at AGI, they've been involved in obviously writing emails. They've been writing, sometimes they help, they end up submitting something for a conference, so they write abstracts. Many interns at AGU have written for EOS, which is the digital newspaper. Interns at AGI have obviously written news briefs, and they've worked on Geoscience Currents and other types of writing. So lots of examples for doing this. And so if you are an intern somewhere, talk to your supervisor and find out what kinds of things you can be doing to be building your writing skills. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of things that you could do.
Great, thank you so much. And for those of you who want to access the currents, they are in the handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel, so you can download them from there. And we'll also get that posted along with the speaker slides up on the webinar webpage after the webinar session today, so you have access to them there as well. The next question that we had was, and this is for Bob, what is an example of a word that has a specific regulatory meaning that may mean something else in a non-technical context? So Bob and Ron, I think this probably applies more to you guys, if you can comment on that.
I can give a perfect example that, based here in the state of Connecticut, our property transfer regulation has a word called an establishment, and you could see that being used pretty much commonplace, but it's actually got a statutory definition, and it is basically someone who generated hazardous waste at a certain amount and rate, or participated in one of several types of commercial enterprise, such as auto body, dry cleaning, and things of that nature. And automatically, when one of those properties or businesses changes hands, it has to go through the state environmental cleanup program. So if you mistakenly use the word establishment in Connecticut, referring to a site that doesn't meet the qualifications, somebody could get very upset.
Great, thanks for that. We'll go ahead on to our next question. So when writing a thesis, which do you recommend in terms of writing style? A more descriptive writing style or a more technical writing style? And also, to follow on to that, do you have any advice on how to start writing such a large project or a large document like a dissertation or a thesis or maybe a peer-reviewed paper or something like that?
Well, I wouldn't start working on your thesis writing or paper writing by writing the abstract first. Obviously, that's the last thing you would write. You might consider starting to work on your methods section. That's some lab procedure that you need to write to explain, or you may want to write some descriptive materials related to your field study. If you have done a literature survey about what kind of research was done in this particular locality prior to your beginning the work, the justification for doing the kind of work that you're doing, you already have some of that. So that might be another easy section. I would recommend those 3 pieces as things that you could work on first, because it is pretty intimidating to write a large document like a thesis or a dissertation. So that's my advice to the person who asked the question. That's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
And in the environmental business as well, I mean, you work in small bites. Like I said, sometimes we actually have to have different people writing different sections. So it's a lot easier to take one section and talk about the history of the property, or to talk about the methodology that was employed and write that section up. Particularly if you were the field geologist who implemented the investigation, and then work on different aspects of the report, and similar to a thesis, work on different aspects of it, different chapters, one at a time, get those in a really good position before moving into the next one. But taking it in smaller bites, I think, is my recommendation.
Great, thank you very much. And we've got just time for one other question. I know we're running over a little bit, but I definitely wanted to get this last question in before we close out today. And that is, what recommendations do you have for building partnerships with potential employers so that I can help students find and pursue some opportunities that would give them the ability to build their writing skills? So I think, Bob, you said that you did internships there, and maybe Ron, is there any advice you can give also in terms of working with state agencies for internships?
I would say they need to invite employers or state regulatory people into the university to have them speak, and then you get a relationship that way where you go from there having to do with writing skills.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Ron. We have developed relationships with a number of the local universities, their geology and engineering departments, and we will go in and assist with a class, or in particular field experiences where we've actually brought drill rigs onto the property and taking the students through the whole process of using drill rigs, logging, screening, the sample handling, and things of that nature. This sounds like it was written by a faculty member. So yeah, I mean, we're the resources that are out there for you, at least from my perspective with environmental consulting, is if you call, someone will come. Plain and simple.
Yeah, and one other thing I have to do with writing skills, obviously, if you ask a consultant to come in and review resumes, they'd be more than happy to do that. And that's obviously very important writing skills that the students need to learn.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that insight. I know that'll be very helpful. So that's about all we have time for today. So thank you everyone for the excellent questions. And thank you, Pranoti, Bob, and Ron, for your great talks today and for the vibrant discussion. A lot of great information, a lot of great tips and advice for everyone. And if you have any questions that were not addressed today, you can definitely email them to us at workforce@americangeosciences.org, and we'll make sure to go ahead and send your questions along to the speakers. So thanks again Pranoti and Bob and Ron, for sharing your time and expertise and insight with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time out to do that. And this concludes our webinar for today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.